Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. This is our smaller midweek show called Film Club, where we'll run down the week in movie news and review our recently recommended movie as nominated from the main show. I'm Chris Garner.
And I'm George Aldridge. Later in the show we will be reviewing the underappreciated 2014 hit Edge of Tomorrow. However, first up we have the news.
Okay, so we're kicking off this week. Pretty small week in movie news really compared to some other weeks from like that trailer dump we had the other week. Starting off with Josh Trank has been kicked off the project of the second unconfirmed Star Wars spin-off movie. I think we could have predicted this when he didn't make an appearance at Celebration and they gave the excuse that he was ill.
Yeah, it's been coming. I mean, there were reports a few months ago that he trashed the house he was renting at Fantastic Four. The set of that, there was a disaster. Don't forget they didn't release a trailer till about a month or two ago. So it's looking really bad. And considering he just got the job based off Chronicle, which is fair enough, it's good to see Disney giving people a chance. However, it seems that they got a wrong choice here, but luckily they are eradicating the mistake before the script's even got a writer.
What I can take away from this the most is that Disney has a clear vision of what it wants, and it's not afraid to just get rid of people it sees as baggage, or maybe, I don't know if it was creative differences, if there is some substance to these rumours and allegations, as you said, in the production of Fantastic Four. But it does kind of give more credence to that, doesn't it, really? I mean, if Disney's got rid of him at this point.
Yeah, what it is, on this statement, they're putting, quote, left due to personal reasons, but the reality is that he's been sacked. We all know he has. Yeah,
they won't come out right and say that, because I mean, I think Disney are professional enough, because that would kind of sort of tarnish Trank's career a bit.
Yeah, and it's quite sad too, because Chronicle was a good film. However, this Fantastic Four is clearly, it might be a good film, but it's not doing the best. And it's good, as you said, to say that it's not going to harm his career by having him technically leave to personal reasons. Just probably means that he'll have to do another film or two before he gets into the main light again.
And it has actually made me kind of wary now of Fantastic Four. I mean, I was anyway, and I mean, the trailers have come out, really different tone to when it was initially confirmed from what I expected it to be. The lack of trailers we've had for it and stuff, so it has kind of left me with an uncertainty towards Fantastic Four, but I'm sure Disney will find someone really I mean, who's not going to want to direct a Star Wars movie? They'll find someone really quickly, and it's nowhere near in production yet, is it?
No, I think it's set for 2018, so that's 3 years off still. In all honesty, it's going to take 2 years to do one of the Star Wars films each, so...
And I mean, these things happen. I mean, we've had it recently with Ant-Man, where, they were well into production. I mean, I think Edgar Wright was on the project for like 5 years or something.
I think it was 8. He started writing in 2006, obviously before the MCU.
Yeah.
Then 2014 he left, but that's because they told him, you have to tie it in. He did a few things, they didn't like it. But that just seemed a really negative way, because Joss Whedon's come out, protected Edgar Wright, so... It's an interesting one, but that was left very late, and if that happened to Star Wars, then there'd be a far bigger uproar than there was with Edgar Wright. I think it's just good that they've got it done out the way as early as they can. Go out, get a director. They might even do a different spin-off film to what they had planned. And I still think they should get Chris Nolan in.
Do you think? To direct the new one?
In all honesty, I wanted him to do 7. But I see him... I don't mind if he doesn't do one, he can make another original film. However, if he was given the freedom to do a spin-off film with his own original plans, stuff like that, I think he'd make the best Star Wars film there ever was.
And I mean, I know it's more grounded and stuff, but we know he's not any stranger to a sci-fi film, what with the massive success of Interstellar.
Exactly, he knows sci-fi, he knows how to make a blockbuster, and he's become one of the best directors in America. Or in the world.
He's also one of the only filmmakers going now that tries to use practical effects as much as possible, which seems to be going more with Disney's new take on Star Wars, that they want to go all practical as much as they can. I mean, obviously there's still going to be CGI in there. There was CGI in Interstellar, but for the most part it was all rear projection and as much physically tangible objects on set at a time, which I think is the direction to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Interstellar was fascinating for that because the VFX crew came out and said they put more CGI shots in, I think This Means War, that terrible rom-com, than they did in
Oh yeah,
Interstellar, which is,
wow.
it's fascinating in itself. So I could see him doing Star Wars, and he's even said before he was, when he was younger, inspired by it, as probably everyone was that's under the age of 40.
Mm.
Or no, sorry, everyone that's into film, that works in film.
I'd definitely like to see Nolan on the project, but whether he'd take up something with a bigger name like Star Wars, I'm not
That's
sure whether he'd go for that.
that's the thing. In all honesty, he's the man that's made Batman the cult icon it is today. So
Yeah, that's
it'd be
true.
too big a jump. But as I said before, if he's up for an original film, then I'm still behind him because we need more of them.
Next up in our movie news was that we've had our first. It's not our first image of the new Batman, but it's another image we've had. It's more clearer look at the new costume. And we've also had some set leaks of Suicide Squad, seeing that Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne has been seen on set. So what do you make of these pictures?
Well, it's a funny one. I'll talk about the set picture first of Suicide Squad.
Sure.
There's a guy walking out and they've put cloaks around him, so it's clearly Batman because you're not going to hide anyone else. And then what they've done, they've seen on his leg that it's him because he's got the grey scratch suit from The Dark Knight Returns, and also the black boot. And then I think Ben Affleck was seen on set as Bruce Wayne anyway. So it's intriguing. I think it'll be a scene with the Joker in prison or something like that because most of the Suicide Squad are Batman villains. But it's probably just going to be like a nice little homage to the previous films.
Mm.
But the image of the costume is actually quality. I mean, if you see it in black and white, which is what they intended, it looks a lot better rather than the coloured photo, which has been leaked as well. The issue with the coloured photo is you get a better look at the suit, which is identical to the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel, which is really cool to be fair. Even the bat symbol's the same. The issue with it is that he's pulling his typical Batman face, but in a bright white photo studio.
Mm.
So it looks a bit strange, but if you apply that to the night, I think he's going to look quality. And I'm behind it, and I think I'm sold on Affleck as I was a long time ago.
Mm. Well, the things I took from the I'm going to talk about the Batman suit first. It looks like the cowl is sort of the old style where it's a one piece onto the neck, so that Ben Affleck will have to move his whole body to look left and right, like the Keaton suit was.
Yeah, I've heard about this 'cause there are people chatting about it. What I have heard since though is that I think one of the costume designers came out and says it takes 3 of us to get him into the suit. However, he is able to turn his neck left and right, so...
Alright, because Dark Knight was really the first one. It made a point of that in the film, and it kind of made a joke out of it, that Batman couldn't turn his head, and it kind of gave the person playing Batman on set this sort of otherworldly performance of Batman. He didn't move like everyone else. And I didn't know if they'd gone back to that kind of old style of performance with the suit, but if it's separate, then, it makes sense if you're fighting crime to be able to move your head around.
I think it's just they've tried their hardest for an accurate Batman costume from an iconic comic, and they've succeeded, so it's another good thing going for the film.
And by the looks of it, it's definitely a big departure from certainly the Christian Bale suit we had, which was very much armour-plated and looked like a suit of armour. This looks just like, a Batman suit.
Oh yeah, it's warm.
Yeah. No, it's alright. And the texture on it definitely reminds me of Henry Cavill's Superman suit, which looked almost like chainmail. It's got a texture to it, so it looks like it would definitely fit perfectly in this new universe they've created and will look great up against Cavill's Superman suit.
Oh, definitely. I think with this, because it's an older Batman, you've got the sort of suit, but you can see these clear scratches and almost like it's been used in sort of war effort. So it's quite cool that that's been shown rather than a perfect cowl every time he leaves his house.
And that definitely fits in with the new take on Batman. They're going that this is a more seasoned, more veteran Batman in his 40s, which is the best direction to go for it, in my opinion. I
think this is going to be like a sort of Kevin Conroy Batman from the Arkham games.
Yeah, I really hope so, because that is my favourite incarnation of Batman, and I would love. It looks like we're going to get that from the Batman v Superman trailer that came out. It looks more heightened. It looks realistic, but it's also got that comic book heightened quality to it, which I think will be, if it's pulled off right, will be perfect.
Yeah, I think Zack Snyder, you can, as much as he's criticised because his dialogue isn't the best, what he can do is direct an action scene. And if you want someone to direct Batman fighting Superman, then it is going to be Zack Snyder, let's be honest.
I mean, you look at the fighting styles in like 300 or Watchmen. If they can bring that into this, then... Because, I mean, that's the character of Batman. He's trained himself in all forms of martial arts. We didn't really get to see that side of Batman in the Nolan films. He was very much a brawler. It was very much left hooks, right hooks, punches, and the action was filmed and framed in such a way that it was very shaky cam and you didn't really get a good look at it. But I think, as you said, Zack Snyder's a much better fight choreographer and will use that to the film's advantage. So I really hope we get that. I mean, as for Suicide Squad as well, I think it makes sense putting Affleck in there. I mean, he's clearly been signed up for a multi-picture deal, so it makes sense to use him as much as you can. And also, Suicide Squad coming right out of the gate in their DC universe. It's a big gamble project for a film. Like, outside of the core comic book fans, no one will have heard of Suicide Squad or half of the cast in it. So if people are obviously going to go and see Batman v Superman, and if in the trailers they show that Bruce Wayne carries over into this, it will not only link it into the Joker who's going to be in Suicide Squad, but it'll kind of ground Suicide Squad more and be a better ease into this new universe.
Yeah, with Suicide Squad, I mean, it's obvious what they are. Task Force X, they wear bombs. If they fail to do what they're told to do, they get blown up.
Yeah.
I think they suit Warner Bros.' DC vision of this dark, nasty world. So to have that as your second springboard film, I think it will work. And they've got a director that knows how to sort of make the dark. He did Fury, so as a war film, I thought that was good.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles a squad, because he's done 4 people in a tank for an hour and a half. So let's see what he can do with 7 or 8 working together.
And it makes sense in DC's plan because Marvel, obviously, they established each individual character before. And then we had our team-up movie with the Avengers. DC can't do that, and they've got to just sort of throw everyone in, so that because they're not as popular as Marvel characters, even though we hadn't seen like Iron Man before he came out in a film, people still knew of Iron Man. But with a lot of these DC characters, no one's ever heard of them, so it makes sense to throw them all into your big film, Batman v Superman, which then gives you the tease for later on. And with Suicide Squad, what they're effectively doing is they're taking all of their main villains and putting them in one film, which is perfect, because then you haven't got to set loads of films up introducing these new villains when you've had them all in one place, which is believable for them all to be in at that one point.
Yeah, what I think with this was, if you look at the Avengers grossings, Phase 1 peaked with the Avengers, that's your money hit, and then you've gone into Phase 2 with each film's made more money than the last, because what you had this broad audience going to watch the Avengers, you had the Iron Man fans go and see Iron Man, but then they're introduced to people like Thor who they might not have seen, because to a casual film fan they didn't know the Marvel Universe. And then what DC are doing, because the whole world knows who Batman and Superman are, to put them together, tease your Aquaman, your Wonder Woman, your other characters, they'll reunite 1 year later for the Justice League, so you've had essentially 2 films of these characters as minors. Then you are going to get the underused characters, so Wonder Woman will get her film, Aquaman will get his, but this is post 2 team-up films, so they're going to have that audience locked in. So I think it'll work financially what they want, but it also gives fans a nicer look at them, if that makes sense. They'll be able to see them as part of a team, then decide if they want to watch them as an individual.
The only thing I hope doesn't happen is that Batman plays a massive role in Suicide Squad, because that seems to be DC's crutch at the minute, is Batman. And I think it will take away from the Suicide Squad movie if he features prominently in it, or if Batman's in it again. We've got the Joker in it already. Bring Bruce Wayne into it in maybe like the first 10 minutes just to introduce it. And then I don't think we need him in the film. I don't think this will be a major role anyway, because obviously they'll be saving him for either a solo Batman film in the future or the first Justice League film. So
yeah, I think it'll just be a sort of scene or 2 cameo or something like that. So it's nothing major. It's just cool to see him being cast in that film for a minor role.
And then our last bit of movie news. Sadly, Andrew Lesnie died, who was the cinematographer for films such as the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, lots of other Peter Jackson movies, as well as films such as Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Really sad to see him go because he was my favourite cinematographer. I mean, if you just... Lord of the Rings are my favourite films of all time. You just look at those films, every shot in that film is just beautiful. And I mean, I know The Hobbit is still great to look at, especially An Unexpected Journey, but it's just really shame to see, you know, people of this talent go.
Taken too early, that's what I've got to say.
Yeah.
Still young and still had a big career ahead of him.
But at least, what a backlog of films that he's done. Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, King Kong, loads more to mention. But yeah, it's really sad to see him go.
Yeah, it's a sad day, but thank him for what he's done for the industry.
Okay, so now we'll be moving into our review for our film club. These are always recommended after our main show. Each week we'll both recommend a film to each other, vaguely tying into what our main review was at the time. So obviously last time was Avengers 2. Just tell me why you picked Edge of Tomorrow.
So it ties in. Edge of Tomorrow is one of the best comic book films of the past 10 years, I could say easily, without a doubt. And it's a sad one because the marketing was so poor and it had a bad release schedule that it broke even on its budget, but only just, whereas it was such a good film it could have easily made 500, 600. It deserved a lot more money than it made, and it was a fantastic film. So to tie in with the Avengers is nice because the Avengers got that big crowd where really a few of them could have gone to see this, and it's an enjoyable film as well. It's not this boring, depressing save the world film. It's funny, it's got some great comedy in it, and the action is fantastic too.
Yeah, the background of this film, I remember when the trailers came out, and the year previous we just had the other Tom Cruise film Oblivion, which was also a very similar looking sci-fi movie. I think that played quite a big role as to why this film didn't do too well at the box office. It felt very much like a rehash. I mean, I remember seeing the trailer just going, is this a sequel to Oblivion? Like, what's going on? You've got the same actor, it looks the same. I think that was part of the reason of the failure of this film. I mean, it's made its money back obviously now, and it's had good word of mouth since, but at the time I think the marketing really let this film down.
Yeah, my issue with the marketing was that the original, I think, manga was called All You Need Is Kill, and that didn't go down too well at a test screening, which is ludicrous because if anything you get intrigued to it more. So like, oh, you know, the kill's a strong word to have in a film title, I'm gonna check this out. Rather than Edge of Tomorrow, it sounds like a drama that something that's not what it is. It's Edge of Tomorrow is not a sci-fi title.
Yeah, you could put that title on anything really, couldn't you? It's like All You Need Is Kill. Right out the gate, it's saying what it is. You know it's going to be an action movie from that name.
It was just stupid of them to change it, and then they changed it on the Blu-ray release as well. So I think that now it's called Live Die Repeat: Edge of Tomorrow. So they've cocked it up a bit too much. But the other issue was the release schedule. To bring out an original film in May time is a tough one. Tomorrowland's going to have a similar pattern this year because that's out 2 weeks before Jurassic Park, and it's out 2 weeks after the Avengers. So it's risky to see how that comes out. But if you'd have brought out Edge of Tomorrow in September, would have had a good month or two to itself, would have made a lot more money. And the film relied on word of mouth. I mean, I saw that first trailer and I can't even remember it now. Normally I can remember a trailer for a film. But I just thought, oh, here we go again. A bit boring. But then when the reviews came out, you got 4 stars, 5 stars. And that's when it caught my attention. So I saw it as soon as I could, and it was so good. And I was so happy I saw it at the cinema.
Oh, you see, I didn't get to see it at the cinema. I caught it on Blu-ray, based on word of mouth. I was aware that the film came out and that it had done quite well, but I didn't get round to it until probably towards the end of last year, actually. And I just loved it. The first time I watched it, it was... The best way I can describe this film is it doesn't feel like a huge budget blockbuster like all the others it was going up against. It almost, in some respects, feels like a sort of independent film, like a very low budget film. But obviously you look at the effects in it and like that beach landing, just wow, it looks so good.
It was fantastic. What I enjoyed about it was, so there's blatant CGI, however, they tried to use as many practical effects as they could. So you sort of seen the filming of the suits they were wearing. They're so easy to like CGI and exoskeleton. However, they got Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise to put them on, fight with them, rehearse their scenes with fighting, rather than go for simple CGI. Of course, they use it for the aliens, but they attempted practical, which you can it stands out because it's not a blatant CGI when they're doing stuff.
Yeah, exactly, and that's my stance on CGI. CGI has its place, but if you can do it in practical, do it, because when you can get that mixture right, like they do in this film, it just looks so much better than if all of this was CGI. I mean, you go to films like Avatar, which also have very similar looking mech suits. It's all CGI, so when you watch it, you know that nothing you're seeing is real. But here it feels like this could actually be happening. It looks like a proper war.
Yep, and what's also clever about the war is they almost replicate the D-Day landings, because they start off London and they go over, I forgot the name of the coast, but somewhere where the troops sailed off from. They obviously come to France. The enemy, i.e. the Germans or the aliens, they've already occupied Europe, so the UK is essentially the last hope. So you have this realist film, this realist movement towards it, which is quite cool, because it's like, oh look, it's like sci-fi meets Saving Private Ryan, and I think it's not an obvious pattern, but it just adds a little bit of edge to it, and it's quite cool as well, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, because they have that almost World War II commentary on it, it kind of gives more gravitas to the film, because in your mind, whether you're aware of it or not, you're linking it back to that. So it's not completely out there in the future sci-fi, because there's something you remember from our own past. And I think that really works to the film's advantage.
Exactly, and it's good of Doug Liman to do that, because it'd have been so easy. You get a film, probably about 10, 11 films a year where it's always America in danger of the aliens coming to get America. And the fact that they'd planted it like a traditional war film where they've occupied an actual area and then they're moving around, rather than just have, oh look, they've come to Earth to take down America. It was nice to have a blockbuster to a degree challenge that.
It was nice not to see a big budget action film just in a city again. I spoke about this in our Avengers review. You've got films like Man of Steel, Transformers, where all you see is just the same old city getting destroyed. With this, they have so many different locations, and it just adds just a different quality to the fight, and you can do a lot more. It's more expansive, it's different. So you're always engaged in the fighting, because you haven't seen this in many other films of its type.
Yeah, and it's new, that's the other word. You don't get to see films when they're going around France killing aliens. They're in the countryside, another rare feat. It's almost Western territory, but they keep expanding, and it was just really nice for them to do it.
And I mean, going by the director's filmography before, hasn't really had that many hitters. I mean, I didn't really care for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I hated Jumper.
I never got around to Jumper. I'm gonna keep away from that. I've seen my reviews. I like the Bourne Identity though.
Yeah, but he's had a really hit and miss kind of slew of movies, but this was just fantastic. I mean, he can prove himself now as an action director. There's also some really nice character moments in here. There's not loads of character in the film, but it's in a movie like this, it's more than enough to serve the film.
Yeah, you have your two strong protagonists, and you got Tom Cruise. Which this is interesting because you saw him in the trailer, like, oh, Tom Cruise, here we go again. He challenges himself. He starts out as this coward that only wants to do the PR side of the war, and then as the film goes on, it's almost like a computer game where he ranks up. Tom Cruise goes from the weakling who's useless to this almost war general in himself, one-man army. So I thought that was a great transcendence, and it didn't feel bloated the way they had him turn into this. I mean, it had been so easy for them just to have him do it within 2 or 3 deaths of the film. However, you see him die probably 40, 50 times, and each time he's gradually getting better at stuff, which is great character development.
Yeah,
And then
it's really good screenwriting as well. I mean, what I love about this film is that we're thrown into this world, but we learn as the main character learns, and that's a sign of a film that's written really well. You know, he doesn't know everything. He doesn't know about these aliens or why he's here or how the suit works. Just little things like that. And through the repetition, like it gets to the point sometimes where I'm laughing out loud. Like there's a bit where he's doing push-ups and he needs to get away, so he tries to roll underneath an approaching van and he gets crushed by it and he gets killed and stuff like that. It gets to the point where it's funny, and that's what I like about this film. This could so have easily have been just a really grim, humorless action film, but there's everything you want in this film. You've got character, you've got humor, you've got great action, and you've got absolutely phenomenal acting. I mean, Emily Blunt in this film
oh,
is, she needs to do more action films or just films in general. She's
she's
great in this film.
what's more incredible was that she was actually pregnant when they were filming it.
Yeah,
So
man.
she was saying in an interview, I think it was on Jonathan Ross or Graham Norton, where she had to put this £30, suit on top of her carrying a baby for a
Mm.
month or two. But then she rehearsed her action. She learned to kick ass from it, which was awesome. But the chemistry they have between themselves again is helpful because it's so easy to cast the right actors who can't work together, and they got the best out of the performance.
Mm.
And also, I want to talk about I forgot his name. The name of the general in it.
Oh, Bill Paxton's character.
Yes, without a doubt, he, he wasn't a comedy. You know, you get like comedy characters play the
Yeah,
comic relief. He wasn't that, but he just had 3 or 4 amazing deliveries, and I think the best one was when he got run over by the truck, as you said. They just cut to this close up of him looking down, and he just
yeah.
pulls this face, and it was so funny. And I just thought it was great, and I could watch that. I can watch that film so many times, and I enjoy it each more.
And you know what's great? It's just, oh man, seeing Bill Paxton in a movie again.
Yeah,
Like I don't think I've seen him in a movie since like Twister.
he's great. I think he's slowly emerging because there was another film that he was in recently that he's just a joy to watch on screen,
Yeah,
and they got the best out of him. I think he was in Nightcrawler. That's the one that's come back to me now. Fantastic film.
and Bill Paxton's performance in this. There's moments where, have you ever seen Full Metal Jacket?
I haven't, unfortunately.
He really reminds me in parts of Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. The very sort of wisecracking army sergeant with all
Oh,
like the smart quips and the great one-liners.
yes, I know the character. Oh, yeah, he was exactly like that, and it's the way he's just barking orders. Yeah, I know the comparison. That's exactly who he was like.
And going back to Emily Blunt for a second, I mean, you said she was pregnant during this. You look at her in that scene where Tom Cruise first meets her. She must have trained like an animal for this role. I
Oh,
mean, she's absolutely in just phenomenal shape in this film.
well, the fact they call her she obviously she had the power at one stage to do what Tom Cruise does and keep dying. So that's where she got the name Full Metal Bitch, and you could just like see it in her face.
Yeah,
Like the second he approaches her, she's looking like, "Why are you in my territory?" And she's like meditating during all the spinning things coming at her. So it was just awesome, and they built her up rather than have the alpha male and the learning sort of Padawan woman.
mm,
They switch it on their heads, and you actually have the weak male and the strong female, which worked well in their favour.
mm. And I mean, there definitely is an outcry for more stronger female characters in films. I mean, I know we had it with like we're doing films like Avengers and stuff, but it's still definitely in the action genre. There's definitely not as many as there should be, but they could have very easily have written Emily Blunt's character in this to be the kind of weak soldier, and she's trying to prove herself, and then eventually she becomes badass by the end. But it's characters like another good example is Princess Leia in Star Wars. She just starts off, she's headstrong, she commands other characters, and they're the female characters I like. I don't like the sort of weak female characters who just try and they want to prove themselves by doing it. She just
Yeah,
does it.
I think that's a great comparison there because you look at Star Wars and straight away from the go, Princess Leia, she doesn't care. She gets taken to Darth Vader. She's not intimidated. She's saying stuff back. She's,
Hmm.
you know, almost taking the piss out of the Empire. But then you can look at the newer films. There has been more female characters over the past few years. However, you have tragic ones such as Kristen Stewart in Twilight. Ones that they're there for the men, and it's an interesting one with Jennifer Lawrence in The Hunger Games because in the books, Katniss is the strong, independent woman. However, the transition to the film has been, it's not been bad, but it's not been great because they've still had her as this like lovey-dovey girl. She's only going there to fight for Peter. She wants to save him, and she doesn't start strong. She eventually transcends into that role. Whereas, obviously, as I mentioned before, Princess Leia from the get-go, she's tough, and the same can be said about Emily Blunt.
Yeah.
And it's great that she just starts off as the full metal bitch.
And that kind of goes to my next point as well, not just with her character, but with everything about the film. I love that it challenges not only story, but character conventions as well. I mean, when you were talking about Kristen Stewart there, she's just there for the men or for the romance subplot. They could have very easily have made this, a romantic movie between Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. But they really don't go in that direction with it. There are hints, but the whole film's not about that. There's a respect between the two of them.
Yeah, it's subtle because you get the scene in the car when she's eventually talking about her past. She brings up that when she was dying every day, she fell in love with whoever was with her every day for God knows how many weeks then. And she fell for him and he died. Which is when you get this sad transition to then Tom Cruise picking up on that. And he's starting to like it, but then he's the same thing. He says he sees her die every single day. And he clearly gets attached to her, so it's fascinating to see this in the film. Although it's hinted at the end that he's there to see it because he likes her, you don't get this melodramatic hug and kiss and all that nonsense. It's just a nice smile at the end and then the film cuts, and that's the right way to do it.
And that's all you need. And going back to there where you were saying about Tom Cruise, he's seen her die hundreds, we don't even know how many times, hundreds of times maybe. At the start of the film when he's training up, you see every single time he dies because at that point you're learning with the character and you want to see him get better at fighting, so it makes sense to see him die that time. In the second act of the film, you don't see all those times that he dies, so it leaves it to the imagination of how many times he's actually been with her.
Yeah, and that's strong character development again because it kind
It's
of
strong storytelling. It's great storytelling.
It comes out of nowhere because they're at the helicopter, when they're trying to pilot it off.
Yeah.
He just stops it. It's like, we never make it past here. And as the spectator, we're like, oh, they've never got this far before, but it's the first time we've seen them in this location. So to have such a strong point there was fantastic as a viewer because it jumps. Some people would have tried to count how many deaths they had, but it really does make you think like, oh, how many dozens more has he had at this one location which he's so determined they can't escape from? And that's just fantastic.
And when you get to that point in the film, there's genuinely real stakes because, I mean, the bit where one of the rules in the film is for him to retain this power to keep resetting to the time before the battle. He can't. His blood must remain in his body. So if he got taken to like a hospital and they had a blood transfusion, he'd lose it. And when that point happens in the film, you're like, this is it now. If he dies, it's over. The aliens have won.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing because he does die, but they show the one death of him dying and coming back. So again, they're creating more stakes, which we don't see as a spectator, but we find out and we're shocked by it, which is manipulation. Spectatorship is a powerful part of film, and when you do have an emotional reaction to stuff, that's a sign of a great film.
And I mean, it doesn't completely overblow the character, but what I like about it is that it did challenge these things. It did offer different takes. I mean, this could so have easily have been another macho hero with a romance plot, and he maybe dies a few times, and then all of a sudden then he's like untouchable and he's brilliant. But he's really not. Even by the end, he's still learning from it. And I mean, there's scenes in this as well, like where He's with Emily Blunt, and they go and see that scientist guy. I forgot his name. And he basically explains to the audience about that you've got the Alpha, and above that is the Omega, and if you take down the Omega, the war's over. In any other film, that would have been such an arduous exposition dump. But because you're learning with Tom Cruise's character, it makes sense.
Yeah, you track him for the whole film and each version of Tom Cruise, so it gives you better understanding of the whole thing. But it's right what you said a minute ago about the casting. He's not a macho man, and it could have been so easy for them to have cast one. I mean, you'd look at a Chris Hemsworth or a Chris Evans. They're big guys. They could pull off the soldier. However, you've got little Tom Cruise. Yes, he's done his action films before. He can do action. I never thought of him as an actual soldier until I saw this film for the first time.
Definitely. And I mean, it's not just the differences in story and character. Even things such as like the alien design. They could have just gone with the typical sort of Transformers of gigantic metal aliens, or War of the Worlds type, just what we see in every alien invasion film. But they're really otherworldly, and they kind of look almost like the symbiote from Spider-Man. They're constantly moving, there's like tentacles, and it's a really new design, which I really thought worked to the film's credit.
Oh yeah, they're terrifying too, because you get this scene when I think it might be maybe one or two deaths in to Tom Cruise, but he's with his beach squadron. He hasn't found out about the 4-metal bitch yet. He's with them, and then suddenly out of nowhere, all the aliens come up, and they're just surrounded by them, and they're just fascinating to watch in themselves, because you don't know how they're going to kill them or what they're going to do next. You actually get different variations of the aliens too, which is cool, rather than having the same looking thing, i.e. a droid from Star Wars. You get different versions of every type.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, because they're different, there's a line in the movie where they say, don't think of them as individual aliens, think of this entire army as one big organism. And that's what they feel like. It feels like they're a small part of a big whole.
Yeah, that's probably the best description you could get of them, because they aren't generic aliens. They are, together. They go out as a unit. You see, when often do you see alien films when they're tactically aware of the opponent? In this, they are guarding the alphas, almost the prawns guarding the king in chess. And it continues with that, because by the time you get to the alpha, you've got everyone guarding him. I mean, sorry, the Omega, not the Alpha.
And it's going to films such as you just mentioned before, like The Phantom Menace, or the Star Wars prequels in general, or even going to like Avengers. There's never really that big of a stakes in the battles, because you know that the heroes are going to win, and that the enemies just get cut down like butter. Whereas here, there are moments where the aliens do win, or they do kill a lot of characters. I mean, spoiler alert for the film, but I mean, we've gone into spoilers already, but the squadron, at the end, they all get picked off.
Yeah, it's not even horror. They don't do it in a heroic squadron death. You just have one or two people just getting killed on screen. But that's the brutality of war, and that's what they are showing, rather than building each individual up as, I'm going to save the day at this scene, then you're going to save the day at that next scene. They don't do it one by one. They just kind of have it happen as it would do.
And when I was saying earlier that we just get enough character, if I can even think of a bad thing about this film, I would have maybe have liked to have seen more interaction with the rest of the squad, just to get to know them a little bit more. But there's definitely certain characters that we do get to know. It reminds me very much of the opening to Predator, where we have all our main cast in a helicopter. We get like a 5-minute scene with them, just interacting with each other. And we get to know their sort of character identities and traits. I mean, there's a character in this, for example, that always likes to go into battle completely just in his underpants.
Oh yeah, it's great fun, because you look at them as individuals with personalities.
Yeah.
And then it's right about the squad, because essentially the first, I'd say until maybe the 7th or 8th death, he doesn't care about finding the 4-metal bitch. He tries to protect his squad each time, although he's known them for one day. He grows this connection to them, whereas they don't grow it back, because obviously they just know this nutcase from a day ago in their eyes. So you do get this squad depth that's being built, and what's nice is they don't forget about them. You might not see them in the middle third of the film, but by the time it gets to the finale, they're all together with the 4 male bitch in their midst.
And all the plot threads are tied up. Everything works. There's no tangents that go nowhere. It's a really tightly written film, perfectly acted, great action, great special effects, great performances from everyone, not just the main two leads, but I mean the supporting cast in general. The only thing that kind of took me out of the film for a slight moment was the credit song. Love Me Again. I didn't think that really worked with the rest of the film, but I mean, that's the credits, so, you know,
yeah,
who cares really?
I think that was just kind of they would have bought that little slot, because although he smiles at her, he's more smiling because she's alive, not because he loves her.
Yeah.
But the song kind of killed it, but at that time it was too.
But I mean, that's the end of the film. Yeah, I mean, that's like, what, 2 hours into the film? Who cares what the credit song is? And
it's great as well because you have a film that's not over bloated, it's not under bloated, it has a perfect runtime, and it's incredibly rare to find that. Saying about the Avengers, there was so clearly 45 minutes to an hour gone that we needed. Whereas Edge of Tomorrow perfectly has your minute timing. It doesn't end too quick. If it ended too quick, everyone would have wanted more.
It doesn't outstay its welcome. It's the perfect length. It's a really, really awesome, nice little film, and I hope that it's finding an audience now. I mean, I know it wasn't a complete flop, but I don't think it did as well as everyone wanted it to. But yeah, I hope it starts finding an audience and it can become somewhat of a sort of cult classic almost in a few years, perhaps.
I think to a degree it already is. I mean, obviously I was a big fan and saw it at the cinema, got the Blu-ray opening day, and everyone I spoke to, I've just told them, like, this is a film you need to see. And for every single person I know that's seen the film, they all loved it. And I think one of the examples was I put it on a film night for some of my neighbours, and they loved it. I mean, they're into their war stuff, but they love this. But then as soon as it finished, they're like, oh, I want to put it on again. We didn't watch it again, but we saw the first 30 minutes, and it was so interesting because it flows as well, just seeing the whole film again. Because you're so used to him dying that when it happens again, you're just not shocked, whereas it's actually the same film twice.
Yeah, for all those reasons and more, I can't recommend Edge of Tomorrow enough. I think I've said everything I want to on the film. If there's anything else you can think of, go for it. If not, then
I think that's everything. All I can say is that buy the film, give it your support.
Definitely.
Don't watch it illegally. Just go out, put some money in. Just so they know that this is making money on home sales, because it deserves that.
And it looks great on Blu-ray too.
Oh, it's beautifully filmed.
So that was our review on Edge of Tomorrow. That was also our roundup of this week in movie news. Be sure to rate, like, comment and subscribe onto all of our social network links. The links will be in the description below. Next week for our main review, there isn't a big film out of the cinema, so what we're going to do is we're going to give you our trilogy review on the Mad Max series in our lead up for Mad Max Fury Road. Really looking forward to that film, and it's always good going back and watching the Mad Max films.
Oh, they're great fun. Look at the creative input. I'm going to go into more in detail next week, but without Mad Max, there's no Fallout and dozens of other apocalyptic films.
Yeah, and I mean, just to refresh my mind for Fury Road, it'll be great. I've definitely got a lot to say about Road Warrior.
Yes, same, not the only one.
So join us next Monday for our main show, and until then, thanks for listening.
Goodbye.